You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Do you ever wish someone would tell you what you're supposed to be doing, when you're supposed to be doing it, and how you're supposed to be doing it? Well, I've got you covered with school counseling lesson plans for the entire school year. And the best part, they're absolutely free. Go to bit.ly/counseling lesson plans to download yours today. I hope you find these super helpful and you're going to have your best year yet. Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. You know I love to kind of follow a theme here on the podcast if you've been listening for any time. And for the month of March, I want to take you through step by step what my lesson plans look like. Some counselors may have a very detailed lesson plan they follow and a curriculum map or guide they use for the year, but some of you may just be winging it, and that's okay. I've totally been on both sides. But I've found that it works better to have a plan. Then you spend less time planning and stressing and doing things last minute and more time helping the students, which is the best part, right? So what I like to do is I do a school counseling lesson plans, and I do them for the entire year, and I break it down by tier. So each month I'll have what I'm going to do in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and the data tools. Now these are merely a recommendation. Of course, you're running a referral-based counseling program, and you're going to form your groups and individual sessions based on high needs and referrals that you're seeing. But these are just things that I notice and trends that I see that tend to come up each time of year. So I'm going to walk you through what you can do in March at each tier that I think will be super helpful for your students. Now I have a freebie on this. If you go to bit.ly/counseling lesson plans, you'll get free lesson plans and a free curriculum map for the entire year. So what I'm doing is giving you a sample of what March looks like so you can get some ideas for your program. But if you download that freebie at bit.ly/counseling lesson plans, you'll find everything you need. You'll get your own copy. It's even editable, so you can go in and make the changes that work best for your program. So don't sleep on this freebie. It's a good one. It'll help you plan out the remainder of this year, and you can even get a head start on planning for next year if you want to be extra motivated. Also, I want to mention my Impact members. So how we have it broken down. So if you don't know what Impact is, I feel like I talk about it a lot. I love it so much. But Impact is my membership for school counselors. And members get access to all of my resources, but they also get access to lesson plans. So, for example, they'll get the March lesson plan so they know what to do. And then when they click the links inside the lesson plan, so if I say, okay, for tier 1, I recommend doing this class lesson, when they click on that, they get the lesson included. So they get all the resources plus the plans included in their membership. So if you want to learn more about Impact, go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. Each week this month, I'm going to talk about a different tier and then wrap it up with data tools. So, of course, we're going to start off with tier 1 recommendations for the month of March. I love to teach a self-regulation lesson in March. It's a good idea to revisit emotional recognition and self-regulation strategies during second semester. And a self-regulation lesson helps students develop a new language they can use to describe their emotions, levels of energy, and feelings. A lot of times we'll do a feelings recognition lesson at the beginning of the school year, which I also recommend, but I think it's so important to revisit this, not only how we're feeling, but what we can do to self-regulate and to feel better. So students will learn to associate each emotion that they're feeling with a color or temperature and a corresponding self-regulation coping strategy. Now, if you're familiar with zones of regulation, or if you use that curriculum, that's a great one that I've used before. I've kind of done my own take on self-regulation, and I like to use temperature to describe the different emotions. And I'm going to give you some examples of what that can look like now. So for a self-regulation class lesson, it's a good idea to, go in the class and tell them like, hey, today we're going to be talking about self-regulation. What do you know about this? What do you think it means? It's kind of like a little KWL chart. Do you remember doing those in like 5th grade? You know, want to know, and learn. So you're just kind of checking in and seeing like, okay, what do you know about self-regulation? Have you ever heard of this before? Do you know what the zones are? Anything like that. Just kind of see where they're at. That'll help you get a baseline of their knowledge before you get into your lesson. Then I like to do a fun icebreaker. So what you can do is you can show them some different temperatures or colors depending on how you're explaining it. So for example, I like to explain that when they're feeling cold, this could mean that they are tired, sick, or sad. But if they're feeling cool, they're in the cool spot, everything's good, they're happy, calm, relaxed, ready to learn. When they're warm, they're warming up, heating up, and this could be various reasons, maybe excited, maybe embarrassed, maybe frustrated, but a little more energy than the normal amount. And then finally, when they're in that hot temperature, that's when they're really angry or afraid or mad, and that's even more of an excess of energy. So kind of using that scale, and I like to use the temperature analogy to show them, they can be cold, cool, warm, or hot. And obviously cool is where we want to be, right? It's all cool, it's all good at the cool level there. Same as you could do with zones of regulation, the blue zone, the green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. So for the icebreaker, you can get kids up and moving and have them act out these different temperatures. Be like, everyone show me what it looks like to be cold, and everyone will shiver, or show you what it looks like to be cold. And then you can go on to explain what that means. Show me what it looks like to feel hot, and they can be fanning themselves or panting. It's kind of fun, kind of silly, but to get the conversation started. Then after that, you can have a discussion. So you can put some pictures around the room of images of kids in different emotional states, right? Maybe a kid who's crying, maybe a kid who's screaming, maybe a kid who's smiling. And then they have to go around and they're trying to figure out which photo is which temperature. And then afterwards is when you discuss, so you're saying like, well, how did you know this person was in the cold temperature? And they could say, well, they looked sad or sick. They looked kind of tired, low energy. Or how did you know this person was in the hot picture? Oh, well, their cheeks were red, their fists were clenched, they looked angry. So it's kind of cool to talk about any misconceptions the students might have about what these different emotional states mean, and to also use those body cues. How can we tell the person in the image is angry? And like I said, clenched fist, gritted teeth, hot cheeks, learning how to recognize what that looks like in others and in themselves. Then you can move into the main activity. An idea for a main activity would be to discuss those coping strategies or ways to self-regulate. So you could split the kiddos into groups and then tell them that they're each going to learn about some coping strategies that could help them. And you can have them really perfect the coping strategies. So something like deep breathing, a physical activity, talking about it, writing it out, a calm down corner. They can kind of practice what this one would be. And then they'll come back and teach the class about it. So this is fun. So you're breaking that whole class into small groups and being like, okay, group one, your coping strategy is deep breaths. And then they're going to practice, different deep breaths that they could use. And then they're going to come back and teach the class like, hey, here's 3 different deep breaths you can try. A belly breath, a flower candle breath, and, a tiger breath or lion's breath where you inhale and then make that sound with your tongue out like, oh, yeah, that's a lion's breath. So they can come back and kind of teach the class, because we all know if you can teach something, you truly know it. So that's a cool way. Instead of having the kids learn all the coping strategies, they can really master one and then teach the others. And then I love to wrap it up with a reflection. So have students, do some kind of self-reflection or journal where they discuss which coping strategy they think will help them the most, what they want to try to use next time, how often they feel that they're in each temperature or zone, something like that. So that is an idea for what you can do for a self-regulation class lesson. Like I said, I love to do these during March, and I really recommend that you try one as well. Okay, I'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.